A good day to let this franchise rest in peace is the fifth Die Hard film starring Bruce Willis. Now, this film I was sort of interested to see. I didn't see it at the cinema, I saw it on Blu-ray. No, that's not my copy. I actually bought it for my dad for Father's Day and he lent it to me to see what I thought of it. Now, I have to say that it's one of the worst movies that I've seen in a long, long time. Just to give you a little bit of context about my history with the Die Hard movies. The original Die Hard film is a film that my dad drove us to Blockbusters to rent when I was about like 8 or 9, something like that. And we watched it near Christmas. I absolutely fell in love with it, and it's been one of my favourite movies ever since. What makes the original Die Hard work is that Bruce Willis's character, John McClane, is an ordinary guy, just a sort of blue-collar guy, getting caught up in a shit situation involving terrorists and hostages and having to save the day. He walks over broken glass, he gets really badly hurt, but he manages to save the day. That's what made the original Die Hard film work. It was fantastic. I even have a lot of time for the sequels. Now, all of the sequels have the same problem to a certain extent, in that they're not relatable or realistic, as you could argue the first one is. Essentially, the second one was in the airport, the third one in the city of New York, the fourth one basically across the whole United States. And they turned, over the course of the sequels, they turned John McClane into your sort of superhero action movie star. Now, that was something that I know the original film was trying to avoid. They wanted to show this guy is vulnerable, he's real, blah blah blah, and he's since become a superhero. And that problem has always been there in the sequels, but never so prevalent than in A Good Day to Die Hard. There are moments in this movie where you look at the screen and you think he'd be dead. John McClane would be dead. And that is one thing that immediately kept me out of the film and kept me detached from what was going on. Now, the plot of number 5 basically follows John McClane's son, played by, I believe his name's pronounced Jai Courtney, who's over in Russia doing some spy shit, gets caught up in a plot, and John McClane has to fly over to Russia and try and save the day. Immediately alarm bells start ringing because this film is about 90 minutes long compared to the 2 hours plus of the other 4 movies. So essentially we get over there, and the first half hour of the film, apart from a few sort of a couple of establishing scenes at the beginning, there's a 20-25 minute car chase which you've seen in the trailer, which is actually, quite well done. I get the impression that a lot of the effects were practical. It's quite well shot for the most part, although this is definitely a post-Jason Bourne Die Hard film, because while this car chase I think is actually quite well done, a lot of the action in the rest of the movie is so heavily shaky cammed that you can barely tell what's happening. But this scene was actually quite well done. My problem is, you spend the first half an hour of a 90-minute movie on one scene. I was bored. And the reason being, there's a few. Essentially, the scene went on too long. Yeah, it was about 20-25 minute car chase. It went on far too long. Secondly, you don't give a shit about any of the characters involved in this car chase, because there's been so few scenes before it. They haven't gotten us emotionally invested at all in what's going on. And secondly, the way that John McClane acts during this car chase is quite frankly abhorrent, if you ask me. In terms of, who we know the character is, he does not act like John McClane. Essentially, he causes as much vehicular destruction as possible. It's sheer Carmageddon. Innocent lives will have been lost during this car chase. And yet it all comes across as being so mean-spirited. There's a scene where John McClane gets hit by a car, and the driver gets out speaking in Russian, and John McClane just punches him. This is a member of the random public. John McClane just punches him to the ground and he's like, "Do you think I understand a word you're saying?" and then steals his car. I'm sorry, but John McClane wouldn't do that. You know, you have to remember, John McClane is a police officer, he's a cop. He wouldn't do it. It's not in his nature. You know, he may take the car, but he just came across as being really mean-spirited. So there are so many reasons that car chase didn't work. And another problem with the movie is that Jai Courtney, who, for whatever reason, the writer, who I believe is called Skip Woods, which I think tells you everything you need to know about the level of writing you're going to get in this film, Jai Courtney's character, John McClane's son, is not likeable at all. They essentially rehash the awkward parent-child relationship that he had in the fourth one with his daughter, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who, oddly enough, has been cut from the extended version of this film. But you get that again, you know, oh, we get it, the kid doesn't like John McClane, but John McClane's going to turn him around by the end of the film, and blah, blah, blah. It's, you know, it's been done before. It wasn't done particularly well the first time round, and it's done even worse here, because there are no sort of scenes that go deeper into their relationship other than, you're a shit dad, oh yeah, well, you were a dickhead son, you know, and that's all it is. There's just nothing, there's nothing there. More problems I had with the movie. The villains, the plot. Basically, you don't know who the villains are in this. They have so little charisma and personality that they become furniture. I couldn't tell you the plot. I was forgetting the plot while I was watching it, because there is so little plot, but what there is so convoluted that it doesn't go in. You know, I miss the simplicity of Alan Rickman's thief in the first one. And even the villains in the subsequent movies, you know, were okay. But this is just terrible. Like, I couldn't tell you who the villains were. And there's so many double crosses and all the rest of it. You tune out and you don't care, because from the beginning you've not been emotionally invested. Another criticism. John McClane is essentially playing the sidekick in this film. It's his movie. It's the fifth movie in this franchise. Bruce Willis is in almost every scene, I believe, but he doesn't do anything. He barely says anything. There's no humour. As I said, the film feels very mean-spirited, but there's no humour throughout this, and Bruce Willis just looks bored. During the film, Bruce Willis looks as bored as I felt watching it. And honestly, I got about an hour into this movie and I almost turned it off, but I thought, no, I'm going to see it to the end, because I've sat through this much of it, I might as well see it to the end. Oh God, I have so many criticisms with this film, I can't even begin to explain them all. Essentially as well, the way it's edited and paced, the film is essentially a series of set pieces strung together with seconds-long, tissue-thin exposition. And because of that, you never have chance to, and as I've said, this is a problem before, you never have chance to invest in what's going on. So all the while you're just watching shit happen in front of you, and none of it's really sinking in or has any resonance or impact, because you just don't care. The film's directed by John Moore. Now, John Moore has a bad reputation. This is a guy who's done Max Payne, he did the remake of The Omen, he did the remake of Flight of the Phoenix. I don't dislike John Moore, believe it or not. I think he's a perfectly, you know, talented director who makes shit films. You look at some of the shots in this are actually really creative. Credit where credit's due, there's a few creative shots in this, and I feel like that about all of his movies. But they're always so terribly written that they're crap. But I feel like, given a good script, John Moore might make a good movie one day. I'm going to say that now. Maybe one day we'll get a good John Moore movie. But this certainly isn't it. This is terrible. You want to know what the best thing about this film is? The score by Marco Beltrami. The score's pretty great, actually. I know people criticise it for being too loud and blah blah blah. It's probably trying to drown out the terrible fucking dialogue. But the score's actually really good, you know. It homages enough of the original films and themes, I believe, were done by Michael Kamen. And it brings something, you know, a little bit different to it as well. I liked the score in this. I would have rather have listened to the score for 90 minutes than have to actually watch the thing. The score was great. So essentially what they've done with this movie is they've made a 90-minute extended episode of 24 without any of the talent behind that. They've turned John McClane from likeable everyday hero to an international thug who just grimaces and growls and hits innocent people and no doubt causes the death of many innocent people. This is not a Die Hard film. This is, the thing is, like I said, I actually like some of the other sequels to a certain extent. They're sort of guilty pleasures, you know, I watch and enjoy them. I've watched them more than once. This film I'll probably never watch again. That was another criticism as well. The final sort of climactic action scene is so terribly shot. You know, it's too dark, you can barely see what's happening, too much shaky cam. So just if you thought you could see through the darkness, you know, you've got all this shit to deal with. And essentially, Bruce Willis, I'm going to, you know, spoiler alert, if you actually care about this film being spoiled, you know, turn off now, but spoiler alert, Bruce Willis is hanging from a helicopter, let's go, goes through a plate glass window, falls through several stories of a building. Essentially, it's like, even fucking Superman would probably think, holy shit, you know, but no, John McClane just gets up, starts running, he's a superhero. It's terrible. This film is so crap, I can't even begin to explain. It's easily the biggest, well, I'm not going to say biggest disappointment of the year, because the reason is I went in with low expectations, having heard all the negative buzz about this movie, so it is as bad as people say. If anything, it's worse. People have said that, I've been looking at reviews online, people have said, oh, you know, as a sort of brainless action movie, you can sit and watch it and it's fine. It's not. I honestly struggled to get through this. There's that car chase, which, had it been 5-10 minutes long, great, probably would have been a lot better. You even get bored during a car chase. And I think being bored in a Die Hard film is just awful. So, a good day to Die Hard, a good day to please leave this franchise alone and don't make Die Hard 6, because it'll be, if this is anything to go by, it's time that Bruce Willis, you know, hung up the dirty white vest and left John McClane, you know, let us look at him through rose-tinted glasses in the 80s. I don't want to see John McClane again, unless they had, you know, real talent behind the camera. Get Shane Black to write a Die Hard 6, you know, then I'll be interested, but other than that, no, I don't want to see it again. So, a good day to Die Hard, don't waste your time on this movie.